Hey everyone, this is Yuetong here from Locofy. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to take a popular design from the Figma community and turn it into code using Locofy. What Locofy does is that it helps you to turn your design into production-ready front-end code for mobile apps and web, enabling you to ship 3 to 4 times faster with your existing design tools, tech stacks, and workflows. I'll be guiding you through this process from start to finish, end to end. We'll go from finding a popular design on Figma, converting it to pixel-perfect, high-quality code, and deploying it to a live website. You can also export the code and customize it in your code editor. Alright, let's hop right in. So let's go ahead and shop for a shopping website. Alright, you can see here, this design here has 1.2k downloads. I think you can see why. It has a bright and vibrant design that's perfect for a fashion shopping website like this. Okay, now that we have the design, let's open up the Locofy plugin. Let me introduce what the plugin does. There are two main widgets, tagging of layers and drag and drop pre-built components. Since we're working with an existing design, we're going to be focusing on tagging of layers. So, what is tagging? To the human eye, it is easy to tell that this is a button. However, to the computer, all it sees is a bunch of text and rectangles. What tagging does is that it allows us to indicate to the Locofy plugin what kind of element this is so that we can easily generate the code for it. Let's start with tagging the buttons first, starting with the sign up button. Now, I want to draw your attention to this group here. It has text and a rectangle inside of it. We try to avoid it as it will generate unnecessary elements in the code. What we can do is to use autolayout. Figma will automatically put it in a frame with only the text inside of it and the correct fill color from the rectangle. Let's name the button Sign Up. And also, let us center align the text. Alright. Now, let's go ahead and do the same for the rest of the buttons. Remember to auto layout and center them. Okay, let's scroll down. For this send button, let's group them up together by selecting them using Shift. We can frame these two up together using Option-Command-G shortcut for Mac and Ctrl-Alt-G for Windows. Now, let's auto layout and center align them as well. Now that we have set up the button and layers, we can tag them as well. Let's go back up to the sign up button and tag it. Here, we will tag it as a button. In this properties page, you can see that we support libraries like Material and End. However, since we are using a custom design, we will just select none. You can also add any basic attributes or advanced ones if you need to. Next, let's go to the Styling and Layouts tab. This takes care of the styling and responsiveness of the buttons across different states. In the top row, you can see that we have 1200, 768, and 428 tabs, which correspond to different browser widths. That means that any settings we apply inside our chosen tab will only apply when the device size is smaller than that of the selected width. For example, 428 in this tab. In the next row, we are able to style it for its normal, hover, press, and disable state, and so on. Let's go back to default and quickly add a hover effect right now. Let's change the fill color to be slightly lighter, and now we have a hover effect. In the final tab, we have Actions tab, which is where we do the user flows. You can either scroll into a different part of the page, change the page, open another URL, and other things. For this example, let's set up a placeholder sign-up page. Since we don't have a frame, let's create a frame here and name it Sign Up. Now, let's go back to the Actions tab and select Change Page. We can either select another frame by searching it up here, or we can click on Locate Frame and click on the actual frame itself. Just remember, if you are using components, you just have to do it once and it will apply to the child components as well. Now, let's go ahead and tag the other buttons too. Now that we are done with the buttons, let's settle this input field here. Let's tag it as an input field. As it is a custom design, we will choose None. There are more basic attributes available here. As you can see, we have auto-detected the placeholder text, add your email here. You can choose different types of inputs as well as more advanced attributes. There is the styling tab which takes care of different query states and actions, which we won't need anymore, so we are done here now. Now that we are done with our design, let's go ahead and preview it. Here, we can see the preview, which is actually running on live code, so we can interact with the elements that we have set up. Let's try our sign up button. And you can see the hover effect and the color getting lighter. When I click on this, it will go to our placeholder page. Let's also take a look at our input field. Look, you can actually type in there. There are a couple more things like links and these cards as well. Now, let's take a look at the responsiveness of the design. Right now, it's not very responsive yet, but don't worry, we'll get into it very shortly. Now, to stay as close as possible to design intentions, Locofy reads the Figma constraints of the auto layout settings to generate responsive code that behaves the way you want it to. So, let's break down our design into smaller sections. Let's draw a frame around each section. Figma will automatically add the items inside the frame to the frame itself. We can see here that the navigation bar is within the hero frame. For design purposes, we are going to create a new frame around the nav bar and move the frame from inside the hero out into the new frame that we've created. Alright, make sure that the frame is touching the sides. This will make it easier for us to make the nav bar responsive. Let's go ahead and name it Navigation Bar. Let's draw a frame around the hero section. Make sure each section is touching each other as well, and they are as close as possible together. Now, let's frame everything else. As the brands is already in a proper section, go ahead and make it into a frame. Next, we have the new arrivals. And then we have the favorites. And then we have the app download. And there's also the community sign up, which you can just change into a frame. And this can also be done for the footer. Now, let's rearrange the frames to be in a chronological order and name each of these sections so we can refer to them easily. Alright, we have split up our design into 8 sections. Now, let's pull out all of our frames. And let's go ahead and work on these sections one by one. Our goal is to use Figma constraints and auto layout settings such that when we resize the parent container, it will be responsive. At certain points when the design breaks down, we will use the Locofy plugin to stack, show, and hide elements for better responsiveness. Now let's look at our nav bar. We have the fashion logo here, and we have some links on the side plus a sign up button on the right. So firstly, we want to make this inner section responsive. As we can see, this frame and this inner link frame, they are already activated with auto layout, and let's set this to center align for now. And let's apply space between, let me put this to the side, space between. So it will automatically resize the frame when we resize it. All right, now let's also apply auto layout to the outermost frame. We also want this inner frame to be set to fill so that it resizes together with the outer container. All right, looks good. And as you can see, okay, let's just test this out for a moment. And we can see that the design still breaks down at a certain point in time. So what we can do is to switch from links to hamburger menu at some point in time. So first, let us get a hamburger menu, which is over here. All right, let me put this here. All right, let's get the hamburger menu here. And what we want to do is to put it together with our links. So let's put this here. Hang on. All right. Let's put this here together with our links and let's shift it to the back. Right. And now let's center align this container. All right. Now it looks good. And let's go to our links. All right. We want our links to be hidden on tablet. So let's go ahead and group them up. And let's auto layout this and also name it links. All right, let's also tag it as a container, as it is a container that contains our links. So what we want to do is to go to styling and layouts, and we are going to hide this on tablet mode. So let's go to 768 and go to hide. All right, now let's go to the hamburger menu and let's tag it as a button. Go to styling and layouts. All right, and we want to hide this on default. So let's press hide here and show here. Right, that's correct. Okay, now let's go ahead and preview this. All right, here we can see that the button disappears for a moment here and the design breaks down. The great thing is our media queries are adjustable. So let's go ahead. All right, let's close this first. Now let's go ahead and go to links here. Go back to styling and layout and let's come here and let's change it from 768 to 800. All right, so let's take a look again. All right, much better. So just another thing to note, if you want to decrease the padding on the header on smaller devices, as you can see at about 428, the padding becomes a little bit too big. We can also take care of this in the Locofy plugin. So we can tag this in the container as well. Here, let's go to the navigation bar, tag it as a container, go to styling and layouts, and at 428, we can see that the padding is 75, which is a bit too big. So let's change it to 20. All right, let's take a look again. And now you can see it looks much better. So as you can see, you can fine-tune your designs in Locofy to make sure that it looks perfect for you. All right, now let's move on to the hero section. Firstly, let's take a look at the lady here. See how there's a lot of objects here around the right side? Let's group them all together in one frame to make it easier to manage. Let me go ahead and pull the image up. All right, and let's group them all together. Let's go ahead and name this frame lady. Now, Let's return back to the leftwards and frame them up together, like so. Alright, select this, and frame it up together. Now let's try to auto layout this. Do you see the items shifting around? Right, as you can see, Figma will separate up the components, which is not what we want. So I'm going to show you how we can include these rectangular backgrounds as part of the auto layout. First, let's take out the rectangles. Okay, now let's auto layout this. Now, do you see the item shifting also? Right, no worries, we just have to apply the left padding here. And you can see that it shifts back to its original place. Alright, now let's put the rectangles back. What we can do here is to use absolute positioning to position them to where they should be. Back here. Alright. Okay, now let's send them back to the back. Okay, now they are part of the auto layout. Now let's go to our hero section and auto layout it. And make sure to set the padding again to account for the difference on the top of 50.99, and you can see it's brought back down correctly. Now let's go ahead and tag this as a container. Let's fire the plugin again. Alright, set this as a container, and let's head to styling and layouts, and the 1200 tab. You want to make sure that the lady actually snaps down when we reduce the screen width. Let's press it to down, and we are done. Let's also make sure to align the hero section. Alright, before we preview it, we want to make the lady scale down as well, as we reduce the screen size to improve responsiveness. So let's tag this as an image, and let's head to the styling and layout section, and let's set the max width to 50%. And let's go to advanced CSS properties and type in height and auto. Alright, so let's preview this. Alright, looks great. Alright, let's move on to the new arrival section. Okay, let's scroll down. Here you can see there are 3 panels, and what we want to do here is to make them snap down responsively as we reduce the screen width. To start off, let's auto layout the frame on the outside, and as usual, let's add the padding to ensure that it moves back properly. Okay, let's set it to fix and fix, and let's remember to auto layout the inner frame as well. Make sure it's filled, and let's also make sure that this frame containing the 3 panels is also set to fill, and let's also tag it as a container. Alright, make sure that each of the 3 panels are hard. As for this case, we do not want the images to scale. Now let's go back to the container, and let's go to styling and layout at tab 1200. Now we want to make sure that it snaps down at the 1200 tab, so let's add a flex wrap here. Alright, go to advanced CSS properties, and let's add a flex wrap, which specifies whether the flexible item should wrap or not, and let's also add wrap here, which will wrap flexible items if necessary. And let's also add one more, which is justify content and space around. So what this does is that it will ensure that you have space on the left and right that is equivalent, and it will also make sure that it will snap down at the 1200 mark. Now let's preview this. As you can see, it snaps beautifully. Yep, and that's how you configure a 3-panel. Right, now let's move on to favorites. Next, we have favorites, which is a 2-panel, and this time our goal is to ensure that images should shrink proportionately with accurate aspect ratio, and to make sure that at a certain size they snap into columns as well. Alright, first let's auto layout the outermost frame and make sure that it is set to fix and fix. Let's also go ahead and auto layout the innermost frame as well. Make sure that it is set to fill to ensure that it is responsive, as well as the frame that is containing both of the 2 panels, the 2 images. Alright, let's set it to auto layout and make sure that it is filled. And let's go ahead and set it to panel container. Alright, we want to ensure that these images scale, so let's auto layout them as well. Make sure that it is set to fill. Alright, set to fill. And the images itself should also be set to fill to ensure that it scales. Alright, let's make sure that these text boxes are also set to fill, and that space between is activated so that the distance between the text and the arrows will resize accordingly. Let's go ahead and do that for the other one as well. Alright, now let's tag those images. Right, tag it as an image, and let's hit to styling and layouts and add in advanced CSS properties for height and auto. This ensures that the height scales together with resizing, and let's do that for the other image as well. Alright, let's tag it as an image, go to styling layouts, and let's add it in again. Okay, let's head back to panel container and let's tag it as a container. Go to styling and layouts and go to 800 for mobile and let it snap vertically. Alright, let's preview it. Okay, it looks great. And now we have 2 responsive panels which scales as well. Moving on, we will now have the voucher component here. Alright, let's look at the right side of the design, which is the phone, and we can see that this is made up of many different elements as well, which makes it hard to auto layout. So we'll take what we've learned in the hero section and apply it here as well. First, let's put all of this together in one frame. Alright, now let's name this as phone. Okay, so let's put this together as an image. Okay, now we can go ahead and remove the frame here, and we can slot this in. Alright, make sure to try to centralize it as much as possible. Alright, okay. Now we want the image to scale as well, so let's tag it as an image. Let's open the plugin again. Alright, let's tag it as an image. Go to stylings and layout, and let's put in height and auto in the advanced CS properties, and also let's remember to put it on 50% max width. Alright, okay, so let's auto layout the outermost frame, and let's also add in the padding. Remember to put this as fixed, and let's add in the paddings to make it proper again. Okay, let's stretch out the frame to restore it to its original width. And let's auto layout the vouchers as well. Let's set it to auto layout. Now we want the image to snap down, so let's go to stylings, add 800. Let's come here and let's snap it down vertically. Okay, and let's take a preview. Alright, it looks great. Now we can see here when it snaps at 800, the image becomes a little small. So let's close this. Let's go back to the image. Let's go to styling and layouts and go to 800. And let's come here and change the width to 90% to increase the width. Now, let's preview it again. And we see now that it looks much better. Alright, now we are done with the vouchers and we can head on to community. Alright, let's start off with auto layout for the outermost frame and let's set it to fix. And also let's look through the element here. Here we can see that a rectangle is once again acting as a background, and as we've learned in the hero section, we want to avoid this. So let's repeat the steps we took back there. Right, so let's go to rectangle, copy the color. Let's go to the outermost frame and let's fill in the color here. Okay. Let's also center align the frame. Alright, and with that, we can delete the rectangle. Okay, now let's group out our elements. Let's group up the text and then we will name it join. And let's also group up the submission form elements. And we will name it form. Alright, let's auto layout form. Back here, let's auto layout form to remove the rectangle, and we'll keep the size to be fixed as we don't want its size to change when we resize the parent container. And as we can see, the text has moved. So let's align it back to center. Alright, that looks better now. So back to join. Let's auto layout this. Alright, and make sure that both of the texts are set to fill and hug. Alright, now let's turn the outer group into a frame and auto layout it. Okay, let's change it to fill. And as we can see here, fill actually changes the width here. What we want to do is to set the outer layer paddings properly so that the text remains contained inside. Let's go back to this. Now, let's use option and check for the padding. Alright, 341.29. Let's go back to community and set the paddings for that. 341.29 and also on the right. Now we can see that it's properly aligned right now. So let's set off the frames to fill and hug. Alright, let's preview this again. So right now, as you can see, when the padding gets smaller, the text gets pushed to the right. That's because we have set our padding to be very large previously, if you remember. So what we can do, head back to styling and layouts. Let's go to 1200 and let's change the padding here. And if you notice just now, this was also not centered aligned, this particular text. So let's go ahead and center align it, and always remember to center align all text. And let's go back to the preview and let's take a look again. Alright, now it looks much better. And with that, we're done with the community section. Alright, and let's delete the rectangle and auto layout. And as you can see, it cuts off at the padding. So let's go back here and check for the padding here. Alright, we can see that the padding at the bottom is 110. So let's come back here, auto layout, and also set the bottom padding to 110 and make sure that it is fixed hug. Alright, now let's go to the inner section and let's also actually just name this inner footer. Okay, auto layout, centralize it and make sure that it's spaced between, so that the distance between this left section, which is fashion, and this right section, which is link, the distance will resize accordingly as we change the screen, just like when we pull it out like that. Alright, let's also go ahead and just name this as fashion and this as links for easier reference. Okay, now let's go to styling and layouts and let's name it a container. Let's go to styling and layout. Let's go to 1200 and we want this to snap down at this width. So let's set it down vertically here and inner footer. Right, Now let's preview it. Okay, now we see that fashion actually sticks to the site, so that is great. Now it is time to work on the links panel. So we will have to frame out all the groups. So let's go ahead and auto layout all of them. Make sure that the links container is set to fixed, as we want the links to maintain its structure while we resize the screen. Now we need to settle the squash text. So what we need to do is to set auto width on this text so that it will not be squashed up. Firstly, let's check the original height of this text, 205 and 111. So let's go ahead, select the text, and let's set it to auto width, and let's resize it back to its original size, which is 205. We will do the same here. Open it up, select all of the text, set it to auto width, and let's resize it back. Likewise, auto width, and resize it back to 111. Now we want to make sure that the outer frame and the links and the footer, they are all set to fix, hug, and fix, hug, and all of the text is set to hug. Lastly, let's go to links, and let's set it as a container. Let's go to styling and layout, go to 800, and we want this to snap down. All right. Before we preview, let's also create some gap between the fashion and the links. So let's head to the inner footer. Let's go to containers, styling and layout. Now let's go to 1200. What we're going to do here is we're going to go to advanced CSS properties. We're going to look for gap. And we are going to create a gap at 50 pixels. Right, done. Now let's preview it again. Now we can see that it snaps down here. And when we come here, it snaps down again at 800. All right. And with that, we are done with the last section, which is the footer section. Okay, now that we are done applying responsiveness, let's combine them into a single page. As you can see here, I've cleaned up the sidebar. Just some things to note before auto layout. Make sure all of your frames are applied, and when you select them, make sure you select the outermost frames. Right now, so let's select all of this and apply auto layout, like so. All right, let's apply auto layout. And let's reduce the spacing here to 0. Now you can see they're all together. Just one more thing to make sure, and ensure that each of the frame has fill so that it will scale together with the parent. All right, let's just quickly check this. Okay, check. Okay, now let's give this a test. Now we can look and see whether our design is responsive. Let's go ahead and resize it. Now we see the hamburger menu is working, the girl is snapping down. Let's look at our tree panel. It's also working well, it's snapping down as well into 3 different panels. And here with our favorites, we can see that the images and the panels here resize, and it will also snap down. And the vouchers is also working well. The images are also resizing. In the footer, we can see that the links snap down and they snap down again, right? So as you can see, it works well on the desktop mode. From all the way to 800, it's working pretty well. Right, so now let's take a look at mobile. Right, here this is where we might want to make some tweaks. As you can see, the padding is not the best and everything is a bit more squished up, but no worries. With Locofy, we can make minor tweaks, and we will go ahead and tweak this to have more responsive mobile design. Okay, now that we are done with the main part of it, now let's move on to mobile configuration. So now when it comes to mobile, there are 2 main things to tackle. Firstly is that the text is too big for the screen and it fills up too much of the screen space. Secondly is that padding can become too big and it can cause layout issues. So let's take a look and see how we can modify our web app to be more mobile friendly. So firstly, let's pull out the navigation bar and let's take a look at it. All right, let's have a preview to see what's up with it. All right, okay, so as we can see, The logo and the fashion text is a bit too big, especially for mobile size, and there's this gap between the hamburger menu and the sign up button that's really obvious at smaller sizes. And then the button here is also squished up because the text is too big. So what we need to do is that we need to reduce the size of the fashion logo and text, reduce the size of the sign up text, reduce the padding at the sides of the tablet, and we also need to reduce the gap between the hamburger menu and the button here. So let's get to work. Now I'm gonna speed up this process so you can see how I tackle this issue. Now let's take a look and preview and see what's up. Okay, here we can see, nice. So we can see here that the padding actually reduces here, and we have reduced the gap between the hamburger menu and the sign up button, and it does not look so squished anymore. So great. Let's move on to the hero section. Okay, so let's also preview this and take a look at what's going on. So as you can see, it actually gets quite unresponsive on a mobile level. What we need to do here is to reduce the paddings, reduce the text font size with the text height along with it, and we also need to shift the positions of these two absolute position rectangles. Okay, so again, I'm gonna get going and we will try to fix this. Okay, now let's take a look and preview this. All right, okay, let's reduce the screen size here. So as you can see, the text will reduce in font size, and the rectangle is also moving its absolute position to accommodate the changes in the screen width, and you can see it's fully responsive, so it's working well here. Okay, with that we can move on to the next part, which is the new arrivals. Alright, let's pull this out and let's take a look at the preview here too. Alright, okay, as you can see, there's not too much issues here, except the font here has to decrease and the padding here also needs to be decreased. So let's work on that right now. Okay, now let's take a look at the preview. Now as you can see, this thing doesn't snap down anymore because the font size is okay, and you can see now that it's more centralized too without padding issues. And as you can see, it works fine. So now let's go to favorites. Okay, let me pull this over. Okay, now let's take a preview at this. Okay, as you can see, the leaf here is a bit off. We will have to center it back its positioning, and as it gets smaller, the words here get a little bit too big, so we have to decrease the font size of this tool. So that's what we're gonna do right now. All right, now let's take a look at the preview. Okay, as you can see, everything scales nicely. Yep, and the words are scaling too, so that's good. And now let's go to the voucher section. Okay, let's take a preview at this. Now we see that this looks mostly good. The main thing we need to work on is this image here. Okay, so we'll just work on increasing the size of the image at different media queries. So let's get to it. Okay, now let's take a preview at this. Okay, now we can see it's no longer becoming ultra small and it scales pretty well. So this works too. And then now we can work on community. Let's pull this out. All right, now let's take a look at how it looks on preview. All right. Okay. So what you will notice is that the text gets more and more squeezed. So what we need to do is to reduce the outer padding and the text size intermittently, so it's not squished up here. And one thing to note here is that the email form here is also not resizing properly. So we need to reduce the font size and the box width of it to respond dynamically to the screen width. Okay, so now let's work on it. Okay, now let's preview this as well. So now let's take a look at this. As you can see now, the text isn't getting so squashed anymore as we've reduced the padding, and now the box here is also responding dynamically to smaller widths. Alright, as you can see here, it's working well. Now let's just take the footer just to take a look at how it's on mobile, and as we can see here, it works pretty well. So we will just leave the footer as it is. And now we'll go ahead and put them all back together. Now let's preview it. Right, now it looks great on mobile. And with that, we are done with mobile modifications. And moving on, we'll move on to exportation. Okay, now we're going to sync to the Locofy Builder. Just to note, in order to get the best code, you should rename your layers, as your code will be generated based on your layer naming. For example, your class name, component names, and so on. Now that we are ready, let's go ahead and sync our code. All right, let's choose the frames that we want, and let's click on View Code. You can select a couple of frames and only sync those items, or you can sync all of the frames. So let's sync our additional frame here, as well as our shopping landing page. And then we can click View Code in Builder. All right, now we can view the code. Okay, welcome to the Locofy Builder. This is where you'll be taken to after syncing your designs from the Locofy plugin. As you can see, the shopping landing page here has been loaded inside of the Locofy Builder, and there are a few things that you can do here. You can view your code, create components, and add props for dynamic content. You can also view and share a live prototype with stakeholders, collaborators, teammates, and so on. You can also export your code or deploy it directly with one of our integrations. Now, let me walk you through this process. Firstly, we will view our code. As you can see, we have code here on the bottom panels, the React code on the left, and the CSS code on the right, and the corresponding code has been generated for each page. Over here, you can also tweak your framework settings such as TypeScript, styling, and file naming, and you can change these settings according to your team's coding styles. Next, I'll be showing you how you can easily create components and make props for dynamic content. For example, with this new arrival section, let's open this up. Okay, now with this fashion section, for each of these cards, you might want to pull some data from your backend in order to render these cards dynamically. So we are going to create a component. Now you can give this a name. In this case, fashion card is correct since we have named our layers earlier. Now let's create a component, and you can see here that we have created a component. We have a new piece of code here called fashion card.tsx, and this is the card code itself, and we have the CSS on the right as well. Now let's add some props over here. For example, we can add name, because we might want this to be dynamically filled up. So let's go ahead and create the prop. The prop title name works, but we can edit it to be fashion name, just for it to be a little bit more specific. and we can create it. And now you can see here, inside of the fashion card code, we have added a prop called fashion name here. Now, let's go ahead and turn another one of these components into the same one, and that is how we can reuse components. Now, let's come here and let's make component. And what you will see here is that you can go ahead and choose an existing component instead. So let's go ahead and select that, and you will see that some of the props have been automatically added because we have detected that some things need to change. We can also see that an arrow here is added as well, which we might not want to be a prop, since things which are constant should not be a prop. So we can go ahead and delete any items that we find unnecessary. So that is it for creating components and adding props. Now we will show you a live responsive prototype. So let's go ahead and view prototype here. Okay, you can also share your prototype with your colleagues, stakeholders, and teams by simply copying a link or sending them an email. So let's go ahead and open up one. Now, let me pull this out, and you can see this design running in the browser. All right. So now we can go back up here and we can hover over this, and you can see that there is the hover effect that we have placed on the sign up button previously. And if you click on here, it will bring you to the sign up page. Now let's go back to the builder. Okay. With this live responsive prototype, we no longer have to create multiple prototypes, one for each screen size. With this, you can just have one prototype, and you can share it and view it on all your different devices. And also in this way, your stakeholders, teammates, collaborators can all come in and experience your design, what it will look like in code without even writing a single line of code. And this is helpful for user research and getting early feedback on your products. Once you are satisfied with our preview and we are done adding our components in, we can actually go ahead and add in more components. For example, like this nav bar here, we would want to reuse this on future pages. So let's create a component. We can do that for other sections as well, like the hero section too. And as we create more components, you will see that our shopping landing page will start to string. The code will start to string, as a lot of them now are replaced by components. So finally, let's look at our options for exporting code or deploying. And now before we get to that, also note that you can very quickly copy your code if you want a quick snippet. For example, let's go to our fashion card, and if you want to copy something, just press here and you can copy code, and you can do the same for your CSS code as well. All right, so now I will show you how we can easily deploy our code. So now let's take a look at our deploy. Firstly, we see that we have two deployment options, Netlify and Vercel. Today we'll be using Vercel to deploy, so let's click on Vercel. And now let's copy our token. And let's go ahead and paste it here. Now let's save. Okay, now our project has been deployed. Okay, now our project has been deployed. Now let's go ahead and view our project. Okay, as you can see, this is hosted on Vercel. So you can go into Vercel to edit your domain settings to turn this into a custom domain name. And just like this, we have gone from design all the way to code and live website in just less than an hour. Now let's head back there and look at export. All right, now we can see here, we can also choose to export our code, and inside of export, you see a couple of options. Firstly, you can see screens and the components, or you can export components alone. So for example, you can see our nav bar, hero and fashion cards which we have previously created. You can export them individually, or you can get the screens along with all of the components. And finally, we can select an export method and choose to download a zip file or add to GitHub. Once you have configured this, you can make a pull request to your repository directly from inside of our builder. But for now, let us download the zip file first, and after we've downloaded it, we can go ahead and open this on our code editor. We are now in our VS Code, and you can see that we have our components, fashion card, hero, and Netlify here. So let's go ahead and do a quick npm install to get our dependencies installed. Let me go ahead and just do that. Now let's run npm start. As you can see, our design is now on our local machine and is responsive, and it also takes us to the sign up page. Once we have the code on the local device, you can go ahead to add your logic layer, connect the backend, integrate with your APIs, and so on. Very soon, we will be releasing a couple of features where you can easily connect with APIs and pull data from your databases directly from inside of the Locofy Builder. From here, you can see how we have taken a popular design from the Figma community, converted to code, and deployed directly either to Netlify or Vercel. Hope you have enjoyed this guide, and we look forward to bringing you more such guides. Do let us know what you would like to see, or if you have any questions, do leave them in the comments below. Thanks for joining us today on this video, and we look forward to seeing what you build and ship faster with Locofy.